Greetings, friends. Welcome to Soul Empowerment. My name is David McLeod. I am your life mastery coach and author of the book, A Life to Die For. And I'm so delighted to be here with my three amazing women friends who are just the epitome of brilliance. And today we're going to be having a very, very interesting conversation about the power and wisdom and impact of animals in our lives. We're calling this the wisdom of feather and fur. So I hope you enjoy it. Now I'm going to go around on my screen just to invite people to speak up. And first up today is Christy.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Soul Empowerment. I'm joining you from Southern Maine. I am a spiritual guide and intuitive healer, focusing largely on inner child healing, helping people understand the challenges in their lives and what opportunities are there to seize, SEEZE, to help you expand and grow. I'm really excited to talk about this topic today because since I've become aware of animal messages and messengers, it's really brought a lot more insights to me in my work and in my own personal life. I do work in person in Southern Maine and also worldwide with individuals and couples. So I will leave it at that for now.
Beautiful. Thank you, Christy. And next up is Nancy.
Hello and welcome, everybody. I guess I'll state where I'm from. That sounds good. I'm just outside of Nashville, Tennessee, where it is a beautiful, beautiful late fall day. When I'm not co-hosting here on this amazing show, I also host a show on the Wellness Universe Lounge, Vibrant Wellbeing. And I do work in life as a well-being coach to help women primarily find their own voice, authority, and energy. And I live the self-care life. So I embrace all things self-care. And I'm just happy to be here today to explore and share our really unique, awesome topic.
Great. Thank you, Nancy.
Okay.
And Sarah, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Sarah, or Sarah Jane, whichever you prefer. And I'm in the UK, on the south coast, in a little place called Bournemouth. And there are many things. Well, there are three hats I wear, if you like. Mostly I share one particular hat. I do my own live program once a week via Gift of Healing TV. But I also channel. I channel from many mythical beings. And I found that I have been told by them that we have many animals, guides and guardians, but specifically that we all have a guardian wolf, every single one of us. And so sort of share meditations, and I've shared a meditation to connect with your guardian wolf, to connect with other animal guides. And so that's a side of me that I haven't necessarily shared here before, but I feel is appropriate for this particular program. And yes, there's I do channel messages, and sometimes they can be from animal guides. So that's just part and parcel of what I do.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. And so you've already kind of given us a bit of a, let's say, an appetizer. So this idea of a guardian wolf. Now, I mean, I know I have my own power animal, but I didn't realize that wolves were assigned as some kind of special guardian for everybody here. Why don't you start us off by talking about that a little bit?
Okay. That message actually came when I started connecting with many mythical beings. And
can you just help us understand what do you mean by a mythical being as well?
Well, the mythical being I'm going to talk about is the werewolf. So I hope that helps people realize. But I'm not just talking about the werewolf. Dragons, unicorn, centaur. There are so many, and many of them have been given a really bad name. Their myth, their legend has been distorted to create fear. And one of the things when I first connected with the mythical beings was they asked me not to share their myth and legend. Now, vampires, werewolves, they've all gone into the horror and the fear realm, of our films, etc., etc. But when I connected, all right, I will as briefly as possible share my very first connection with the werewolf and how it all came about. I used to do shared care with a young man who had a learning difficulty, and he liked to go and see films I would never, ever, ever have gone to watch. He liked horror movies, and he wanted to go and see a film called Man Wolf. And yes, you can guess what that was all about. And there was one particular scene, and I knew exactly what was going to happen. Anybody could have written that scene if you've got half an ounce of common sense. And I thought, I really can't watch this. I really don't want to watch this. This is, yeah. And I thought, oh, okay. So I actually asked the werewolf. I invited in the werewolf. And I am not joking, the sense of peace and calm that descended on me was amazing. The werewolf actually wanted to give me the message right there and then in the dark cinema. It was just like, excuse me, no, I haven't got pen and paper. Can we wait till tomorrow when I will be able to sit down quietly with you? And part of the message that the werewolf brought was, we have given you your own guardian wolf. You are one with your wolf. Now, if you understand the meaning of the word werewolf, were is the old English term for man. So that we are one with our wolf made so much sense. But I wasn't just aware of one wolf. I was aware of 3, because I used to be a trainee handler at the UK Wolf Conservation Trust. So I've actually worked physically with wolves, and the 3 wolves that were with me and still are with me, Kodiak, Kenai, and Alba, 3 wolves I actually spent time with in the physical. So yes, the wolf energy is as strong as people choose for it to be with them.
Okay, beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing that. And so I guess, Christy and Nancy, what's your experience with wolves in particular, but any kind of animal that has come into your life?
Do you want to go, Nancy?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, I don't have a werewolf, but that would be super cool. Maybe I do, and I just haven't met. I haven't met my werewolf yet. I guess my segue, I've always been animals have always been drawn to me, like, I don't know, just they're so calming and peaceful. I would say at this point in life, one of my spirit animal really is birds. When I do a lot of hiking and walking, and I think at one point, I think you and I were doing a show, David, and a bird flew in the house out of nowhere and was sitting in my office in the corner, watching us do the show. And I just have a lot. I just feel very connected to the energy and the light joy of birds. Trying to think, I love owls. So when we were hiking, when we see an owl, that is very, very, and hawks. Another experience, I think horses are also very spiritual. A few times I've done outdoor yoga with animals. And when we are in a part of our practice where we're very still and quiet, the horses would walk up and just lean their head over the rail and just gaze like they were, I can't even explain it. It's like they were supporting us or wanting to give that loving presence there. So I feel very connected to animals. Plus we have our pet dog, Doug, which as he said, he's a supporter. So I'm open to a lot more. Thank you.
Yeah. And Christy, what about you? Do you resonate with the wolf thing, or do you have a different kind of animal that you resonate with?
Yeah, so I am not aware of my wolf guide. And I kind of live in an area where we do not have a lot of wolves. So I don't believe I've ever seen a wolf in person. My I guess, totem animal, if you will, to the best of my knowledge, or the main one is eagle, American bald eagle. And I started my healing practice in 2013, but it really took me probably from 2010 to 2013 to what I would call deprogram myself from self-limiting beliefs and um, fact-based thinking, to allow myself to get into the heart space that I'm in now, to do the channeling of unconditional love and healing that I'm doing. And in that process, or in that kind of 3-year span, one of the things that I stumbled upon, or that spirit put in my path, was a series of books by an author, Lynn Andrews, who has spent time with Native American and Native Canadian peoples, and kind of learned a lot of their ways and communicated that through her books. So that kind of opened me a little bit to the fact that, animals that appear to us in a significant way can have messages for us, can be ways that spirit talks to us. And in early 2011, I was driving down the highway in my minivan. I had my daughter with me. We were going to see my stepmom, and up ahead, there was a river going under the highway, and I could see an eagle flying from the right side. And there were cars on both sides of me. There were cars behind me. And as it approached the bridge over the river, it landed in my lane. And I knew I couldn't stop. I knew I couldn't go left. I couldn't go right. And in my head, I said to it, please fly up. I don't want to hit you. I can't avoid you. And it started running toward my minivan and actually flew up the windshield. And so for, that split second, all I could see was that eagle. And I think it actually awakened something within me.
Yeah.
And within like a short time of that, I saw an ad in the paper for Reiki. I didn't even know what it was. I took that class, it just kind of led to other things. And then since that time, I've had, 4 or 5 very significant encounters with the eagle. And the message, or let me just back up 1 second. So because of this thing that happened, I became aware of an author named Ted Andrews, and he has a book about animal messages. And specifically, it's a little book that I keep in my car. I keep, one with me, so that when I have an encounter with an animal, I can understand what the message is. And the messages usually have to do with what the animal does in the world. So, for example, the eagle sees far, has a higher perspective, which is really kind of what my abilities are in the healing work I do. And I just want to share like one other thing that happened just the other day. So I was driving home. The road was dark, and all of a sudden, within feet of me, there were 2 chickens in the middle of the road. Pitch black night, 2 chickens in the road. I swerved around them. So
They were trying to get to the other side.
I know. So of course, when I got home, I looked in the book. And the message, according to Ted Andrews, of the chicken is both fertility and divination. And, it's perfect. The message was, pick your divination tools. And I have just been in the process of ordering some new decks of tarot cards and oracle cards. So it was perfect that, so this happens all the time.
Sure.
The animal appears and it's in line with what's happening in my life. And because I'm not in my head so much and I'm in my heart and I'm paying attention to all the world around me, I see these messages that were there all the time, but I just wasn't looking.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, thank you. You know, I've had my own experience with animals, and I have come to learn that my power animal actually is the wolf. It's my number one power animal. I have a secondary power animal, which happens to be a white rhinoceros, if you can believe that. But it's interesting how both of these animals became power animals for me through shamanic journeying. And in the first case, so I have to share, I think everybody has probably, well, maybe not everybody, but there's this story about, you know, the little Native American boy who's talking to his grandfather, and you know, he's having this conflict with a friend, and the grandfather says to the little boy, well, you know, it's sometimes like you've got two wolves inside you that are kind of struggling or fighting or whatever. One is a white wolf and one is a black wolf. And the black wolf is always, you know, it's in the ego. This is the way the grandfather is describing it. And the white wolf is good. It's joy. It's all the positive attributes. And they're fighting and fighting and fighting and so forth. And so the little boy says, well, which one wins? And the grandfather, of course, says, well, whichever one you feed. And I found that, you know, I understood the reason for the story. It was really not about wolves at all. It was just about the struggle that we have inside ourselves for good versus evil. And whichever one we feed is the one we're going to live with most of the time. And so I understood it on that level. But then I had this opportunity to do a shamanic journey several years later, and I'd completely forgotten about that story by now. And in this shamanic journey, the facilitator created it was a visualization, but and lots of really great music and some drums in the background and stuff. It was just really awesome. And he's just describing this process of going into the underground underneath this space and coming out the other side into an open area where all the animals exist. Every animal on the face of the earth, the two-leggeds, the four-leggeds, the creepy crawlies, all of them are there. And just notice them. I really like the way he did this. Don't choose one because you're drawn to it. Let the animal be drawn to you. And I like that. So I just sat quietly in my visualization. I just waited. And I had horses come up to me and kind of wander away. I had a couple of lions come over and wander away. And I saw this one wolf approaching me, and he was kind of hiding in the bushes. You know, it was really hard to see him. Well, when the time came for the visualization to end, there was no animal that had stayed with me. So I was kind of feeling sad and a little bit alone, and I ended up following his instructions. I came back out the other side to the tunnel, and I said, okay, that's what it is for me right now, and that's okay. And then I took a turn around, and guess what I saw poking his head out of that tunnel? A black wolf with blue eyes. Incredibly beautiful wolf. Since then, I realized that black wolf was there to help me learn about some of the darker aspects of myself and to take it into and learn more about my shadow parts. And so I became to realize that the white wolf, black wolf thing is a complete misnomer. Both of them are equally important in our lives. So that's my little story about gaining my black wolf power animal. And I have always in my entire life, I've always resonated with dog energy. So I suspect that, you know, I mean, wolves and dogs are supposed to be related, at least as far as the evolutionists are concerned. And yeah, so I can totally relate to the idea that everyone has a wolf guardian, and you may not be aware of it because mine was hiding in the background. So, you know, I say, as you suggested, Christy, just try to keep your eyes open. You know, keep your heart open and just observe. You know, you're not necessarily trying to create messages out of what you see, but just be there and be present to it and see what happens.
I'd love to kind of postscript what you said, David, about, you know, the black wolf isn't necessarily the bad wolf and the white wolf isn't necessarily The Good Wolf, just to point out to people that we have another episode on polarity, which kind of addresses that whole idea. So
Right.
just a little side note there, if you're
Yeah.
interested in hearing more about, is there good, is there bad, and what's in the middle, please check out that episode because that was a
Yeah.
very powerful episode.
Right. And that's very true. I certainly, I never really associated the color with good or bad or anything like that. It's just that's how the story was told by the Native American grandfather. And I just remembered the story, but I didn't remember the story until after I had received my power animal. You see, that's the beauty of the whole thing. And so now I'm able to see the so-called polarities as more of just a spectrum of color. Just because you've got black and white, what do you have in between? You know? So anyway, yeah, that was my little experience. And I have since, I have not had the good fortune like Sarah of being in the personal company of wolves, but I would love to do it. There is such amazing, incredibly beautiful animals. I like looking at horses also, Nancy. Horses are another one of my favorite animals. So yeah. So anyway, I'm sorry, I kind of went on a little bit of a detour there. So let's get back on the topic. And Christy, you were talking about messages. Uh, you got your idea from this book by, I think it's Ted Andrews. Is that right?
Yes.
So say a little bit more about messages, how we can interpret the messages, and how do we receive them necessarily? I mean, it's not like we're going to hear them in our head, but how do we receive them?
How do we receive them?
And anybody
No,
else can speak up if you've got an
yeah,
answer.
I'm not sure exactly what you're asking. So for me, well, I'm going to give another example. And I'm sorry, I have a cold, so I'm sniffly. My husband and I purchased this lake home where I am right now in 2013. We had been looking for 10 years for a place, and everything that was in our price range was either shared water access or a knockdown, or, just we couldn't afford it. And we were out in our boat one day because we paid to have a dock slip on this lake because we love this lake. And we're just kind of, tooling along, and we saw a for sale sign on the shore. And there was a girl at the dock next to us, and um, I said to her, what road is this place on? How do I get there? And so she said, well, I'm just visiting here. I'm not really sure. So I looked at the for sale sign, and I looked on the realtor's site, and it wasn't there. So I called them and I asked where it was, and drove out here. And it's a very long story, but long story short, the place was, it wasn't great. Um, Something had happened here where there was a code enforcement violation, and the person had been told they needed to, pay a fine and do some things. So they basically locked the door and left. And the place had been for sale for 3 years because of just the weird condition it was in. So we came and looked at the house. We loved it. We knew it was going to be a lot of work. We figured it was, 3 years, and it's been 9 years, and we're just kind of finishing up. But we were out in our boat after seeing it, and we were kind of looking at it. We had 2 daughters going into college, so, financially it wasn't the best time. And yet here it was in our price range because it had been for sale for 3 years with nobody interested. So we're looking at the house, and I said, I just don't know if we should do it. He said, I don't know either. We start to go away in the boat. I look back, and an eagle flies over the house, down over us on the boat, and I said, we are buying this house.
That's beautiful.
So it's that kind of thing, it's like when it's almost like a magical, you couldn't like plan it kind of thing. That's when you need to pay attention. Or that
Right.
situation where, this eagle landed in front of my car. I mean, it wasn't there was no doubt that there was something going on there.
Sure. Right. What about you, Sarah? Do you have some specific recommendations for how people can become aware of these messages?
Well, obviously, the environment you live in, those are going to be the animals that you will see. I mean, we have a wide range of animals that come into our garden, and if they're all bringing messages, goodness gracious me, we've got loads of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we have the butterflies, we have the bees, we have mice, sort of we have different birds that come into the garden. We've got it over here, it's mostly buzzards. It's more up north that you get the eagles. But sort of we have got a wide variety. Now, people say, if you see a robin or if you see a butterfly, it's messages from past, loved ones. Finding a white feather, it's the angels letting you know that they're near. There are many different interpretations for things. There are those people that absolutely talk about power animals, and I think that's to do with indigenous beliefs, etc. And yes, I believe that one of my power animals is the white buffalo, and that's because things came at me 3 times. It's back to that talk that we had. But if you I think it's if you see it an unusual animal for your environment as much as anything else, because if it's something that you're used to seeing on a regular basis, maybe you should be paying attention to it. But you talk about the book that you've got, and I've got this one, and I don't. Oh, that might be the right way around for you. Animal Wisdom.
Yeah, we can read it. Yep.
And and this gives quite a lot of information. Medicine and power of so it's not just a single page or half a page. Legends and traditions. Oh, and that's on the frog. Sort of, but so it's got 3 or 4 pages per animal.
Yeah. Right.
I did a meditation some years ago, and it was I think somebody else was running it. I don't know, I can't remember. And I had absolutely no judgment about which animal would turn up. It might have even been before I became aware that we had a guardian wolf. And we were guided to this place, closed eyes. And then it was like, okay, sort of when you open your eyes, and I've got a little mouse. It's just like, okay, so it's a mouse. But it's like being out for a walk one day up on Dartmoor. And yes, I tend to wear sort of outdoor clothes for walking outdoors, the proper waterproofs, the proper trousers, etc., etc. And so they were sort of a green color. And we were just sort of out on this walk, and suddenly a dragonfly landed on my trouser leg.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like, okay, and so it's what's around. Just being open to what you're seeing, and it is about that opening your eyes to nature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you're right, and I think kind of going along with what Christy was saying. I mean, let's face it, we all see different kinds of animals depending on our environment all the time, and probably more often than not, those animals are just going about their business and not necessarily interacting with us at all. But I think, as you said, Christy, and your 2 examples were very, very specific. Whenever you have an interaction like that, where it seems like an unusual or very coincidental or serendipitous or something like that, I agree. I think it's time to pay attention. Holy crap, did you just see what happened, sort of thing? And now you start kind of, all of a sudden you're aware and you're thinking of it. Or if you see, as Sarah just mentioned, if you see an animal that normally doesn't show up in that environment. Like I remember I've seen a few eagles show up around here, and they're not very common here. So when I've seen I think I've seen them twice now, and I'm thinking, wow, look at that eagle. So I tend to pay attention to the unusual, and I suspect other people are much the same. However, there may be great power and great messages in the usual. So maybe it's just a question of trying to be open and aware of stuff. Yeah, go ahead, Christy.
I just want to mention, you mentioned the mice. So we had some mice in our house, and the message of the mice, according to Ted Andrews, is to pay attention to details. And so once we got that message and there were some things we did need to take care of, the mice were gone. So it can be, even a sudden insect infestation, or, that kind of thing. So it's not just, these like brief encounters. It could be something you're challenged with in your yard or in your home.
Right.
So, yeah.
That's interesting. I know all these things are coming to mind. Well, this summer we were home more, and so I really wanted hummingbirds to come. So, they come in the seasonal. So I put 2 hummingbird feeders out, and for the first 3 weeks, I didn't really get anything. And then I got this curious hummingbird. That, how they're really like they dart around, and then he or she would drink from the nectar. And then next thing you know, I had 2. I started to get hummingbirds. Like there was 2 that was their territory, and they would dart and fly into each other. But then what happened, I think when they were getting ready to migrate, they would come. They really like people. It's very fascinating. Like they wanted, I don't know what, I can't explain it, but they like it when people are around. When if you put out a feeder, they want people to be around, because then they would come and they would fly up and like hover right near my face. And I love hummingbirds. We had a really neat experience with them. And I don't know, I know that they're birds of joy and prosperity, but we had some amazing hummingbird experiences this summer. We actually saw the babies at my mother-in-law's house fly from their nest. And their nest is basically the size of like just a tiny little minute teacup. We saw the mama bird feeding them, and they took, one of them took off, and the mama attended to it, and then the other one did. And it was like the most spiritual, profound experience of getting to be part of that. And then, so I guess that was my big, I guess the ordinary everyday, but the beauty and the fortitude and joy of those birds. I don't know if anyone has any work with hummingbirds, or do you do, Sarah? I'm just curious. Like, I'm just really fascinated by
I
them.
was just looking it up.
Oh, there you go.
And legends and traditions. And as I said, I work with mythical beings.
Mm-hmm.
Tezcatlipoca, Mexico, is a mythical being, one of a trinity of I'm sure Tezcatlipoca is one of the trinity but see, I thought they were more butterfly-like, but sort of okay, wings, hummingbirds, sort of, it's just like a multicolored, very multicolored. But it says God, and it's 4 pages of stuff, and I am not the world's greatest reader, but I don't know whether I can scan it and I can try and send it to you. That might be the best thing to do, because it does give, traditions and legends. Oh, what else? Medicine and power. So elements: air, fire, stone. Obsidian is the stone. Hovering, flight, vibration, color, associations: joy, music, love, the rainbow. Also war. Okay.
They are fierce. They dive bomb. They will dive bomb each other. It's really
yeah. So sort of so yes, it's animals are amazing. And in fact, the first year of lockdown, we know we get foxes coming into the garden, and sort of we sometimes see them more at night, obviously, than during the day. But during the lockdown, we actually had 2 youngsters that would come and literally curl up and go to sleep in the garden, in the open. Yeah, it wasn't just a matter of sort of, it was, because we had such a beautiful summer that year. We really did. So that it was lovely and warm, and they would literally come and curl up in the garden and just go to sleep. and they were perfectly safe in the garden because we certainly weren't going to disturb them. So yes. So
And just a reminder to American people who may not be familiar, when Sarah says garden, we would normally say backyard. But
yes.
that's just because we have different terminologies for something that's very similar. Anyway,
So
Christy, I know
Nancy,
you want to say something.
yeah, Nancy, the thing I'm getting from the hummingbird, and I don't have my book handy, but just look at its behavior. So it darts about, it goes to the flowers, it's enjoying life's sweetness. And I think what I'm getting as a message is not to get stuck in one thing, to try different things, to, taste life's sweetness, stay open to possibilities.
Ooh,
Yeah.
that's
Does that make sense?
yeah.
If you think of it, and also like they have that like iridescent quality to their feathers. So I'm getting, kind of like believing in more than what you see even. So it's almost like if you can almost like study the animal and just see what messages its behavior communicates.
That's
That's
pretty
great.
cool. Yeah, here's one other thing that what you said that is really cool. Is I have a side business, a skincare business, and my business partner and I, around the same time, unbeknownst to, uh, we began receiving feathers just in random places. I and maybe it was the time of the year, but she took pictures of where she saw them and I took pictures of where I saw them. And I guess for me, that's the different colors and the having those feathers appear when we were in a point of um, struggle or striving and figuring the next steps and where we are now. There's just as, like I said, I was like, oh my, what, you too? It was totally, spiritual or divine messaging for us. And the hummingbird, yeah, because I'm in a season of my life where more open because we're empty nesters. We have more time to explore and move from what we traditionally did as we needed to in raising our family to where we are now. So I'm going to explore that. I'm very, very in tune with the messages that our spirit animals give us because there's so much to it. I guess I'm going to explore that. I think with our society today, maybe there's so much going on that maybe is good and is not good that people kind of have tuned out to the richness of being outdoors and with animals. Not everyone, maybe there's more coming around to that, but I feel more connected than ever to wanting to be in the company of animals and go a little deeper like you, Sarah and David, to really find my spirit animal. But I know for one right now it definitely is avian based. It could be other animals too. So that's my rambling.
Right. Yeah, that's great. Well, and Nancy, you said a couple of times you talked about the spiritual nature of animals, and I think that's a very, very important topic because, and I certainly don't want to bypass that. I heard one person say, yeah, human beings have souls, but dogs, and he's speaking specifically about dogs are souls. And I thought, no, that's an interesting perspective. I hadn't thought of it that way. And I mean, okay, that's what he believes. I don't know if I believe that or not. I do know that my dog seems to communicate to me just by certain looks and certain behaviors. He doesn't really bark very much, so he's not speaking, you know. But I can sense his love and connection with me all the time. So I think there's definitely something spiritual about our connection, something that I can't quite put my finger on, and it's beautiful. I really love it. So I'd like to talk a little bit more about the spiritual nature of animals here.
So there's been a message I've been getting for the past couple months. this, excuse me, this past spring, I made a quilt for the house, which is kind of like a wall hanging scene, but it was made out of like printed fabrics. Some of it had loons, some of it had birds, some of it had bears, and I just kind of layered it so it looked like a picture. And as I was doing the bears, I got this message that bears and other animals, such as the wolf, that we have been taught to fear, are really very gentle. And almost like, the thing I've heard about bears is that if you see a bear, you're supposed to go, like this and be big. And, just wondering if our own training to be aggressive towards animals makes them aggressive toward us.
Mm.
And, what would happen if we encountered a bear and we bowed instead of going like this?
Mm. Yeah, very nice.
I know
I
for me
remember,
personally, oh, sorry, I just want to just make this little side note. For me, growing up, I had a dog. I was in a very emotionally abusive house space, and that dog ministered to me.
hmm
So I know he was a spiritual being having a
right.
dog experience.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, yeah. When you're talking about how we respond to bears, for example, I am thinking of some books I read a while back. Uh, I'm I'm not sure I'm getting the author's name right, but I think his name was just Tom Brown, and his books were about survival, minimalist living, and stuff like that. And track. Oh, he was a tracker. That's what he was. He could track any animal, any person, whatever. He could find them no matter what. And it was just fun to read his books and how he talked about just sitting by a tree or something, and then having a squirrel come up and sit beside him, or having a bear just kind of come up and look at him, and he'd just pay no attention. He'd just be there in person. And he said basically the same thing. Most of these animals they just want to go about their own lives, but some of them will want to interact with you in some way. And if you can just be calm and be present and be fully there, you could have a very, very beautiful experience from it. So yeah, I totally agree with you. Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think that's
so much.
sorry, carry on.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Well, I think that's what we have in our garden, because our garden is about nature. Our garden is about it's set up for animals, for wildlife, for the birds. We make sure there are the flowers for the bees, the butterflies. We have bats flying around the garden in the evenings. And it's beautiful, and therefore they feel safe in our garden. We have we couldn't touch him, but we have a very tame pigeon. We call him Hoppy because he's got a bad leg, and he limps. But but he's been around the garden for the last 2-3 years, and he'll perch on top of the decking, and he will stay put when we go past him. If we've put some bits down for him, providing we give him a wide enough berth, he won't fly off. He'll stay. So it's the interaction, I think. It's having the unusual interactions with animals. That is, to me, when we are really, I don't call what goes on in our garden as being unusual.
Right. Yeah.
And earlier this year, it was still pretty cold, and the mice had obviously in one area of the garden had obviously been hibernating. But this particular little one had obviously come out because the sun was shining, but it was still pretty chilly. And I was a little bit concerned about it, and I was actually able to touch it. Just wanted to make sure it was okay. And tiniest little thing. Now that was unusual. So obviously the mouse, Minnie Mouse, was letting me know they were there. So I have this habit of tend to be naming animals, but yeah.
They're great.
So think about you're aware of the animals, they're there. But like the dragonfly landing on my trouser leg, that is an unusual interaction. Or eagle flying over your car and then flying over the house and over you. That's an unusual interaction.
Mhm.
Being
And an
open
important one too. Yeah.
and being open to something that is slightly out of the norm.
Right. Sorry, go ahead, Nancy. You want to say something?
I know you guys just have me thinking. Here's another thing. We have a place in Sedona, which is really a beautiful high energy place. And they have the wild, they're not really called pigs. They're called javelina, but they look and smell like a pig. They run around. They're hilarious. They run around in packs. Typically they're more nocturnal, but last time we were there, we were outside in our patio and over the brick wall, you could see a herd of them. They're like, they always travel in groups. And so I'm like, I'm going to feed them. So I had some chips, some corn chips. I put them down and one of them, they were eating them and one of them just, looks right at me with his little round little snout. I'm like, what is there? Because I hadn't seen him in quite a while. I'm like, it was just really fun. People don't are like, oh, though they smell, they eat garbage, da 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 da. I'm like, well, there's a means and a message of maybe asking us to be more accepting and kind instead of saying, I admire this or that. But it's like they have a place too. They offer, more like the things that we say we don't really like we have a lot of possum here in armadillo, which they can maybe bring more disease or whatever. But I was just like, what is the messaging? Yeah, of the timing of the javelinas, or I think that there is very powerful, like with you, Christy, especially, and you, Sarah, is what's going on in your life, or what, when an animal literally crosses your path or flows into that. What were the
I'd like to go back to that spiritual question, David.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that, something you just said, Nancy, about, really sharing the space, sharing this earth, realizing, every being is important. Every being has a right to have food, water, shelter, whether that's an ant or whether that's, an elephant. So I think that there is a lot of wisdom in the animal world.
Mhm.
When I say animal, I mean animal that we think of mammals and insects and birds and amphibians and all of it. And I think to some extent they're waiting for us to wake up to understand that we're not the head honchos, so that's just one point I just wanted to make sure to convey.
Well, I appreciate that because I feel like, at least in our country, we have this thing of get rid, man conquering beast, of going, shooting for sport, or let's wipe out, like, we don't like snakes. Let's wipe, let's take these pesky animals and remove them from our area. And yeah, so I do struggle with that. It's like there's so much to learn, and how much more appreciative and care can we give our planet when we're attuned to this, rather than thinking it's like a big game hunter, let's
Right.
take down a sacred animal. And even like the little, like you said, the bees, to me, those are I love bees because they are so busy working and providing for everyone. Like yeah.
They do so much.
I know.
Yeah. But I think this is a very, very important aspect of our topic. Regardless of whether you agree with the idea that the humans are at the top of the pyramid or not, there is something that we can learn from these animals, regardless of any other belief system you may have. I mean, we have made many, many, many mistakes in our life. And one that comes to my mind right now along this topic is how we have gone so far to kill off all the wolves because we want to protect our sheep and other farm animals. And meanwhile, without really thinking about it, without even being concerned about the environment, we have created a disaster. Because the wolves are gone, now we have everything else growing out of proportion. And it's only been a few smart environmentalists who said, hey, look, we've got to get wolves back into this space in order to start balancing the environment. And every place that they do this, the wolves take care of themselves. They don't get overpopulated, you know. They do keep the deer population down. They help the bird population to grow because the environment itself is allowed to grow. So, you know, I'm really, really grossly simplifying this to try and make it just to make a point. But the fact of the matter is, every animal is just as important as a wolf, right? And so when you create an imbalance, regardless of what animal you choose to create an imbalance from, you're going to have a problem. I mean, how many species have disappeared off the face of the earth because of our so-called superiority? And what has been the cost of that? Do we even know? So, you know, I'm not saying that we should all become, you know, vegans or anything like that. I'm saying that we have to be much more conscious about how we choose to nourish ourselves. And it's all right. It's perfectly fine, I think, to find an animal and use that animal as sustenance and food, but not to just kill it for the sake of having a trophy in your room. I don't agree with that at all.
It's about respect, I think, right?
Yeah, right. And that's what I think the Native Americans used to do. And not just Native Americans, but indigenous peoples everywhere. They would, when they go hunting, they would give thanks to the animal as they're butchering it. Thank you for sacrificing yourself so that we can survive. It's a beautiful ritual, actually.
I'd love to share just a little short thing. It depends on the year, but sometimes there are fish that live under our dock. And I'll go down and kind of, you know, lay on the dock and watch them and talk to them. And so one day I was up at the house and I could see a fisherman out. And I was like, kind of saying, you know, okay, you know, in my head, okay, fish, here comes a fisherman. Well, he caught a fish. I don't know if it was the one that lived under the dock or not. And so I was just kind of watching him, you know, not kind of irritated, but not too bad. And he took the fish off the hook and he kissed the fish before he threw it back. And
Wow.
I yelled from my deck down to him, "You are my kind of fisherman." And he goes, "What?" I said, "I saw you kiss the fish." He said, "Well, it had a boo-boo."
Yeah, right. I like that. That's
And
beautiful.
so, I mean, that's kind of, there you are, right? So you're in the sport of fishing, but you're gonna let the fish go and you know, and now I guess they have hooks that disintegrate if they get stuck in the fish. So, you know, so I think there are people that are moving toward being more humanitarian humans.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah, right.
David, going back to your point about the wolves, there is a beautiful video, How Wolves Change Rivers. Now, I know I sent the link to you, but I don't know whether the link's visible when this plays on, you know,
Right.
if I go back to the recording. But that is about the reintroduction of the wolves into Yellowstone Park. And
Can you say the title again?
How Wolves Change Rivers. I can put
I have seen that, and it is a beautiful, beautiful movie. It is really, really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough to meet, I'm trying to think who she probably worked for because of the length of time ago it was, but she was actually involved, Suzanne Stone, she was involved with the reintroduction of the wolves into Yellowstone Park. And she was working with the Nez Perce Indians, Nez Perce tribe, the Native Americans. And I actually got to meet some of them as much as I also got to meet her. But she was doing a talk actually at the UK Wolf Conservation Trust. That's how I met her. And she was talking about the reintroduction. And of course, this is the difference that reintroduction actually made. And they talk in that about trophic cascades. And of course, basically what that means is you take the trophy animals out, and this is the damage that is caused by you removing them. And by putting them back, this is just how drastic a change can be made. But there is also a second one, how whales change climate. And of course, there's been a massive overkilling of whales as well. And that is also really interesting. And yeah, and again, they talk about trophic cascades. You hunt whales for trophy, but actually you are damaging, same with the wolves. Because of the reintroduction, the aspen trees grew back on the river lakes again, the river plains again, because the deer weren't there to just munch them and prevent them from growing. And it made a massive difference. And as you said, it brings more birds, it brings more everything, and it decreased the numbers of coyote. The whales actually, because of the way they work in the seas and the oceans, and they work with the plankton and with what they excrete from their bodies, etc., it actually captures carbon and takes carbon out. So our trees are important, but so are the whales, because obviously they help to capture the carbon too.
Right.
So we're damaging our planet from a land and a sea perspective.
Right.
If we listen to nature, not just from a personal perspective, but from a planet perspective.
Thank you. I'm going to go check out all of your resources today.
Yeah, those are great videos. So I just noticed we're getting close to our time here, and I want to make sure to give everybody a chance to say some final closing words before I end the recording. So Sarah, I know you've got to get going. Would you like to go first?
Love nature. It is the greatest gift we have been given. Be aware of your surroundings, whether it's animal, whether it's plant. We have been given a beautiful planet to live on, and it supports us. And we can either continue to destroy it, or we can listen to it, and we can become a true part of it. And for me, I believe, and I know that I believe that we're meant to be the caretakers. And we're doing a pretty lousy job of it at the moment. But there are an awful lot of people out there. When we open up to the gift we're given, and open up to the animals around you. You don't need the books. You can go and look it up on the internet these days. Personally, I like having a paper book. But check out the two videos. How wolves change rivers, how whales change climate.
Beautiful.
They're so important. And thank you, folks. I'll see you soon.
Thank you so much. See you next time.
Nancy, would you like to go next?
Well, I'll just show up here that I agree that we have so much to learn from what the animal kingdom and the world has shared with us, and it is life affirming. It is who we are. Where would we be without our spirit guides, or animal spirit guides, and all the things that they do to give us the very earth we're living on? I think we so busy getting caught up in technology and, improvements that it really, no, we are here because of the animal kingdom and the plant kingdom. And I think I take this to be sacred.
Great. Thank you. Christy.
I would say curiosity, compassion, and whether you eat plants, which are also living beings, or whether you eat animals, be grateful for, the sustenance that our earth and the universe provides to us.
Right. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. I think the way I'd like to finish is just to remind people this program is called Soul Empowerment. And soul empowerment is not just about being aware of ourselves and other human beings, but being aware of our entire environment, all aspects of it. And that's why I think this topic that we chose for this particular episode is so important. We want to draw some attention to just the animals in our lives. And we'll probably talk about other things too. I mean, Sarah talked about mythical beings. Maybe we'll have a conversation about that going forward. What the point we're trying to make is we want everyone who watches this program to feel empowered to bring more of their spiritual soul energy into the world. And the more you do, the more you're just naturally going to start becoming more aware of of everything that's going on around you. Even if you can't see it, taste it, touch it, feel it, smell it, or hear it. There we go. So that's all I have for today. Thank you all for watching. I just want to remind you we have recordings of this and every other episode on my website at yourlifemasterycoach.com. And we'll see you next time on
David, I just want to say that what you just said is almost like in alignment with what we said about wolves. Like, if you wipe out your spiritual awareness, like, other things fall away, but as you open to it,
That's right.
it's a balance.
Well, I like the way you reframed it. Yeah, thank you. All right. Well, thanks everybody. Bye-bye for now.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.